Okay, so we're going to go straight into the different time frames, looking at momentum from both MACD and ADX standpoint, looking at trend. I am going to talk about a little bit of trend analysis when we get to the hourly. So in terms of the market conditions, I'm just going to say a few things briefly. I'm on the road right now, so I'm doing this a little bit different than normal. There were a few more bulls this week, but there were also a few more bears. So the difference between the bulls and the bears, at least based on investors' intelligence sentiment number, didn't really change all that much. So not a significant difference there. Now, one thing that is important to mention is the daily volatility. The average true range dropped down and it's below a declining moving average again. So both and the weekly hit another new low. And so both the daily and the weekly are back to positive when it comes to volatility. It's just not showing signs of real distribution or increased volatility. So we have to go with that for now. Some of what's playing out right now is sort of playing into that. We'll get into that. Let's just start though with the monthly chart. So we're getting a little bit closer. If we look at what's taking place, this 18-month line is getting closer and closer to flipping to the upside. We're not getting any downside movement in price. It's just going sideways here. So if it can keep that up and keep it up through the end of the month, especially if it can maintain an inside month, inside of last month's price action, I think we have to look at that from a bullish standpoint. So we'll have to see. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but right now, I think if it does, we're probably going to get that 18-month line to actually turn up underneath, and we'd have both moving averages rising again. Again, MACD has turned up above the zero line. I think that looks pretty bullish. Green is trying to kick in, but it hasn't gotten back above the 25 level. So from a longer term standpoint, I still think this is going to have a hard time breaking out, but it might not be ready for a big drop right this second. We might want to push up a little bit more before having some kind of a consolidation or a pullback. Okay, let's go to the weekly chart. We've been talking about the potential for this to either hold the 18-week line or, break it. And I still think it's within the realm of possibility of either one of those things happening. And I try not to pre-guess any of these, and forecasts, because if we had both of these indicators telling us the same thing, then I think we can do that. But when MACD shows a little bit of a slowdown like this after confirming a new high, you see how the last peak? I always want to look at the last peak on each time frame. You go and look at each peak and you say, did MACD confirm? Yes. Did ADX confirm? Yes. Did DI confirm? Yes. Okay, well, I don't really have divergence per se. I had a deeper pullback than maybe I'd be comfortable with looking at it from a MACD standpoint, but the ADX is still in a pretty strong position and we're still holding above this 18-week. If we break the 18-week, then I think we have to plan on something a little bit more significant taking place in a test of this sort of support area, and which happens to be the area of the 18-month being the most likely target. But right now, the reaction has been pretty good so far. Now, the daily chart, I actually think this is very important because I know I've drawn in the 1, 2, 3 pattern that hasn't been broken. But one thing that I think since right about the beginning of June, we started to hold, and you can see where I'm highlighting. We started to hold the 18, which was rising. And then we found support at the 18 again here. We found it again here. And then we finally broke it. And then we failed at it here, failed at it here, failed at it here, and then got through it to the upside and then successfully tested it here and successfully tested it here. This has been a really good line. This line has been very helpful at telling us, the shorter term trend and it's having a lot of respect for this line. So I guess the point I'm trying to make right now, unless this line is broken, I think we have to accept the fact that the short-term trend is trying to work its way back to the upside, successfully testing it twice here recently. Now that can change on a dime, but if you notice, the volume action was actually pretty good. You see how this was a bigger volume day than we've seen in about 4 or 5 days? So this little consolidation area, we're breaking out with expanding volume. That's a good sign. Green DI also holding above 25 and turning back to the upside, and MACD confirming as well. So those are all good signs. Now, I did want to spend a minute and just go through something. I drew in this downtrend line on the hourly because I wanted to show how it's a really sloppy 1, 2, 3 pattern. If you look at the way this played out, it broke the trend line and then it came back and tested, and then it had a big gap up to the upside. And in reality, by letter of the law, I think I would call that a 1, 2, 3. Even though this is really more of a sideways consolidation rather than a rally up and forming a true pivot. It actually does form a pivot here, but I think, in most cases you want to see a little bit better, a more defined low and a more defined high. But sometimes it'll be more of a sideways pattern. I think we have to respect that. Not to mention the fact that we did make another lower high and another lower low. So we could have altered the trend line downward. Either way, we have a 1, 2, 3. But look at how sloppy it was. And then we actually came down and made another higher low and then another higher high. You see how we broke out above this peak here. So one of the main point I wanted to make with this is that if you're questioning what you're seeing, like you're not sure about the trend line and you're not sure whether you've got a 1, 2, 3 going, go and look at the moving averages, and they should tell you if price is above the 18 and the 18 is above the 40 and both lines are rising, you have to consider it an uptrend. Okay, it's an easy way to settle any questions that you have with the 1, 2, 3 sequence and whether we've confirmed the trend to the upside. If we have confirmed the trend to the upside, you should have price above the 18 and the 18 above the 40, and both of those lines should be rising. And in this case, they're rising at about the same rate. Now, they're not rising in a crazy manner, but they are rising. I would consider this trend positive with positive momentum based on green DI moving up and ADX about to cross 25, as well as the MACD action. So I just think that was I wanted to make sure I went through that, because sometimes you look at these trends and it's really hard to kind of tell whether you're truly making a reversal or not. So go and lean on the 18 and the 40, and they can be really helpful helping you determine whether things are flipping around or confirmed to the upside. So it's sort of status quo. I've been kind of saying the same thing for about 2 or 3 weeks now, and if you notice on the weekly chart, it had an up move, but it's really been sideways for the past couple weeks. We don't have a definitive move off of the 18, and we haven't broken the 18. We're going to need one of those two things to happen to have a lot more confidence here. One thing I will say is, based on the distance on the monthly chart, we could break out above this high, but that doesn't mean we're going to break out above this peak. I think that's not as likely right now based on the overall position of the monthly chart. All right, that's the update for the week. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time.